St. Louis, welcome, welcome. Jason from St. Louis, and we have Roman from New York. Alameda, California, it's also Bay Area. Welcome, Christopher. And Columbus, Ohio. Hi, Kevin. Well, very cool. I mean, and again, just you can, of course, feel free to say hello, and again, and also again, say where you're from throughout the event. You can ask questions in the chat if you would like, but there is also a separate Q&A section. So right under the chat, there is a little question mark icon. So if you want, you can also ask questions there, and then I'll get to those questions at the end. But let's go ahead, let's get started. So this is an online meetup. It's a hands-on introduction to Okta workflows. The hands-on part is that, I'm not going to have any slides. I'm actually going to be building stuff. So the agenda, again, the hello and welcome. This is what I'm doing now. This event is being recorded, and then the replay will be available right after we end the session, which is really neat. Same page, same URL. I will also upload the video to YouTube. So there is a workflows playlist on the Okta YouTube channel. And then I'll send a message to all of you with the link to the YouTube video and also some additional resources, probably end of today. All right. And then, let's go ahead and do the building. We're going to build two flows. So, and then again, at the end, we'll do the questions. So let me move here. So we're going to build two flows. And as I build those two flows, again, we're going to learn. I figured that's the best way to learn about the workflows is actually building something. We're going to build two flows. One is that when we suspend the user, we're going to send a message to Slack, right? So that's going to be one flow. And then another flow, we're going to build a flow that creates a backup of another flow. So if you need to create a backup of a flow or a folder that has flows, I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so let's get started. Let me switch screens here. All right. Very cool. Let me move. All right, so the first thing, before I actually build stuff, I'm going to tell you quickly about the dashboard, or what you see here. So right now I have this folder open, which is online meetup, and then I have two flows here. But let me go home, and this is probably where you're going to end up just the very first time you log into workflows. So on the home page, at the very top, you've got some videos to help you get started. Now, on the right-hand side, resources. So these are really good resources that you should be aware of. But there's documentation. You can schedule office hours, where you can join a Zoom session and you can get your questions answered. There's training, and then there's also this one is the workflows blog, and then this is the YouTube playlist that I just mentioned. If we scroll a little bit down, there's some popular use cases that you can check out. And there are also some templates. So templates are really out of the box flows and solutions that solve a particular problem. And you can just add a flow to your, import a template and then start running the flow or just playing with it and see how it works. So it's a really great way to learn. Again, so this is the home tab. The flows, we're going to go here in just a second. I'm going to, again, switch to templates. So again, these are pre-built workflows that you can run in just a few clicks, right? And you can search, and you can also search for templates. So I encourage you to check them out. It's a great way to learn by importing a flow and just running it, and then maybe making changes and then breaking it, and then just trying to figure out how it works. And then lastly, there's the connections, connections tab. So these are connections to third-party services. So I'm going to be using Slack, for example. I'm going to be using also Google Drive. So these are connections those services. And once you have a connection, you can call various services or APIs available from that service. All right, so this is everything I've created. So that's for the connections. So that's just a quick overview of the dashboard. So let's go to flows. Okay, and then again, I'm in this folder online meetup. Again, these are all my folders. And then this one is, again, online meetup, hands-on, 215. I've got 2 flows here, but I'm going to build two new flows from scratch. So let's click new flow. And so the first one is, and if I just, right? It's a good idea to give it a description. So send the message to Slack when a user is suspended. And now you also want to click this Save All Data. So this will allow you to see how the flow runs, the history of the flow. So every run, you'll be able to see the data that was sort of passed through the flow. Now, you can also enable this later. So if you forget, that's absolutely fine. Okay, now, so a flow. Now, the first thing you sort of need to think about is how do you invoke a flow, or how do you run the flow? So I think there are 5 or 6 ways, but today we're going to focus on just 2. And the 2, these are the most common ones. So the first one is an event. When an event occurs in your organization, right, you would like to call a flow. So the example we're going to use today is when a user gets suspended. When that event happens, you want to do something. Okay. Now, user can be activated. You can also, there are many different events on which you can trigger a flow when the profile is modified. But again, the basic idea here is when something happens, you would like to invoke a flow. And so you can see here it says when this happens, and click event. And you can see that there are many different sort of applications to which you can sort of connect. And then based on the events that they support, you can trigger a flow. Okay. But again, in our case, we're going to use Okta. And then we can see all the events that Okta supports. Again, every sort of service will support different events. It's a long list, so we're going to just actually search. And then we're going to use this one, user suspended. Okay. And then this event is added. Now, this event has some information, and you can see all this information that we get from this event. Okay. There's date and time, for example. There's the admin information, and this is the Okta user. This is the user that was suspended. Okay. All right. So we got the event, and then we said we would like to send a message to Slack. But this is all the information we get about the Okta user. But let's say we want to get additional information about this user. So this is just not enough. Just its ID, its display name. We will want to get more information. So now we can add any additional steps in the flow. Okay. And there are 2 types of sort of steps. We call them cards here. There's the action and there's the function. So let me go action first. So these are actions to various services, right? And that's how this connections tab is connected to all this. That these are calls to these third-party services, okay? And in my particular case, I'm going to use Okta, which is right here. And then you can see these are all the actions, right? Now, behind the scenes, these are API calls, but I don't need to worry about setting up the API call because these are exposed via these actions. Now, so the one I need is called read user. So again, searching is could be a little bit easy. And then I select read user. And it says retrieve Okta user information. Okay. And then what it does is that it tells me, hey, so this is the input. This is the input for the card. And again, behind the scenes, it's an API call. But again, we don't need to worry about it. And then this is all the output that you can get. So as you can see, you can configure which outputs you want to see. Now, I don't want to see this credential, so I can just uncheck it, for example. And I can uncheck more if I want. But what I do want is I want the first name, the last name, and also the primary email. I'm going to click Save. Okay? So again, an action is a sort of a connection to one of the services that are available. Okay, and again, every service will support different actions. Now, for this action to work, it needs an ID. Now, and we can see the ID is here. And this is probably my favorite capability in workflows, is how you connect or pass data from card to card. All you do is you take the field and you connect it like this. Okay, which is pretty neat. So that's fine. Now, what also really nice is that you can test. Now we're going to test the entire flow in just a second, but you can also test each card individually, most cards. And there is a test this card button. And what we need is the ID. So we're going to go to the Okta dashboard, and I've got a user here, Irene Johnson. And to test, I need to get Irene's ID. Now the ID is in the URL, so I'm just going to copy. That's the number at the end of the URL, and I'm going to bring it back here. I'm going to paste it and click test. Oh, I lost connection. It says okay. Let's try this again. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I don't know. I lost connection for a second, but anyhow, it works. So I'm able to test this card, and we can see this is the information that I get by testing this card. So I get the Irene Johnson, and I get Irene's email. Okay, so this is very handy where you can test a card, before testing the flow. Okay. Next is I want to create a message. So we talked about actions. So these are actions, connections to, third-party services and Okta also. Now, a function is any card that allows you to manipulate data. So you can work with strings, with numbers, with lists, with objects. You can create loops. You can do true, false. You can work with date and time. Okay. So again, actions, you get data usually from these services, again, whether it's Okta or Gmail or Slack, right? And then functions is you manipulate the data that you get. So in our case, we're going to get a compose, which is just a way to create any message. And then we're going to say type user, and we're going to now create the message. So what I do is I take the first name and I just drag and drop it like this. Then I'm going to put a space, and I'm going to take last name and right. And if I want, I can open a parenthesis and I can put an email like this. Okay. And so I sort of create this dynamic message. Now the next step is I want to send a message to Slack. So again, because it's a service, in this case, I'm going to use app action, and I'm going to search for Slack. And again, you can see all the actions that Slack supports. Okay. And I'm going to say send message to channel. And again, as before, usually, again, every card is going to be different, but you have to configure the card. I'm going to select the actual channel. I'm going to send this bot. I'm going to say yes. And this is all default. I'm going to click save. And then it's going to tell me, well, which properties, which fields do you want to sort of display? I don't need the timestamp, but I do need the icon emoji. And then click save. Right? And as before, once I configured the card, I need to connect data to it. So first, this is my message. And I'm going to use user bot. And then as for the emoji, I don't know, we'll put a chocolate bar just to make it fun. All right. Now, I can also test this. So let's give this a quick test and say this is a test message. And this is all fine. We're going to click test. All right, and then I've got Slack here, and we can see that this works. All right. Now, also notice that this is as output here, right? And this is the default name, and it could work. But as your flow gets more sophisticated, I recommend to actually rename these fields and to give it a little bit more context, more meaning. So if I go to customize, you can give it a name, and you can say maybe Slack message, for example. And notice that the name changes here and also here, right? So again, just to give it more context, more meaning, it's a good idea to change the variables. Now, before we test this flow, I talked about connections, but we don't have time to actually create one here. But let me just show you, if you were to use another service, let's click action here. And let's see, let's see here. I don't think I have Airtable. Actually, I don't think I have Asana. Right? So let's say you want to use Asana and you want to add task. All right. And so what's going to happen is that it's going to say, well, there is no existing Asana connection. And then it's going to offer me to create a new connection. So I click new connection. And now every service is going to be a little bit different, but you would enter whatever information it requires and then create a connection, right? For example, if you use any of the Google services, it's going to be similar to doing a sign-in with Google or like Facebook or Twitter, right? It's going to prompt you and say, do you allow the service to connect? And then you say yes, okay? But once you create a connection, it will appear in the connection step, okay? All right, let me close this. Let's save. And now we're ready to actually run the flow. Now you do need to turn it on. So we're going to turn this on. Okay. Now, if you remember, we enabled history, but if you forget to do that, you can just click the name again and then just toggle this checkbox. And now history is right here. So flow history. And let's go to Irene Johnson. Actually, Irene is already suspended. So let's activate Irene. All right, and let's see. We activate it, and then let's suspend. Right now, sometimes it might take a few seconds for the flow to kind of to get sort of activated. But let's see here. Actually, I think we got a message in Slack, so we can see user Irene Johnson. Oh, and then I forgot to add is suspended. So we'll do this in a second. But we can see that the flow was executed. If I go back to the flow, in flow history, I can see that there is a one run. And this is what I said. This is also one of my favorite capabilities. We can see how data flows from step to step or from card to card, right? So this is the event information, okay? And we can see the user ID. It retrieved more information about the user. Then it created the message, and then it sent the message to Slack, okay? So this is very, very handy for debugging and understanding when something doesn't work, for example, or when things do work, you can, of course, also see how it works. Let's make one quick change, and then we forgot, we'll say is suspended. Okay, we can save. Let's go back. Let's see if we have another person here. Oh, Stella is also suspended. Everyone is suspended here. But let's activate Stella. And let's now suspend Stella. All right, let's see, it's still not. Oh, here we go. And then we can see we updated the text, and now we see this here. If I go to the history, then we have another run here. Of course, with now all this information is about Stella. Okay. All right, so this was the first example. And again, just to summarize, the flow is triggered based on an event, right? And then we are reading more information about the user. So that's using an action. Then we're using a compose, which is a function, which is, again, allows you to manipulate data. In this case, we're not really manipulating anything. We're just creating a message. And then we're using an action again, which is Slack in this case. and sending a message to Slack. Okay, so that's one example. Let's go and create another flow, and we're going to call this flow backup, and saves it to Google Drive, right? And we're going to click. All right. Now, I mentioned one of the most common ways to trigger a flow is via an event. Now, the other, I would say maybe as common, but is to trigger a flow based on schedule. So you can say you want to run a flow every hour or every day or every week. And you can just really configure how often you want to run this. Okay. So this is called schedule. So let's do this. Now, a backup, again, let's say we want to run it every day or every week. Let's click Add Event. And this is the schedule. And now it tells you, hey, what schedule do you want? You can see it's pretty flexible here. Now, in our case, let's set 5 minutes and then click Save. Now, next one, we're going to use a function. And then the function here is going to be flows. We're going to create a backup of a flow. You can also create a backup of a folder. Okay. And now it's asking me to choose a flow. And why don't we just create a backup of the flow that we just created? And this is the one here. And I'm going to, okay. And so everything else says default. And then I get back is the size, the file name, and the file content. So now when I create a backup, now I want my backup name to be unique, right? So I don't want it to be, flow backup, it shouldn't be the same. What I'm going to do is I'm going to append a time to the file name. So for the time, I'm going to use a function, and there is a date and time, has a lot of, again, different sort of functions, but the one we want is now. It simply returns the current name. Again, if you want to test this, you can just click test, no inputs, and then you get all this information back. Okay. Next, we're going to create the file name. So I'm going to use another function called concatenate. And again, you can search, which again, very handy, right? And so it takes strings and sort of combines them. So the first one, we're going to say flow backup, okay? And then we're going to get the date. And then every backup will have a different date, okay? Here, we can, again, if we'd like to customize, we can say file name. And then the last step is to save this to Google Drive. Now, this being a service, it's going to be an action. So, and you can search for Google and then Google Drive. And then you can see all these are all the actions that you can perform, call. And then the one we want is upload file. And then the file name. So we're going to connect this way. Now the parent folder, so we want to put this in a particular folder. And so the Subaru would like to put this. And now the folder is this ID at the end. And so, right? And finally, file content, well, that's the file from this export flow card. So I'm just going to connect it like this. Oh, sorry, wrong field. Like this. All right. And that's it. Now, we can test this. Even before running this on schedule, we can test this and see how this works. We can click test. Right? And we can see how it kind of moves the flow, which is really neat. Now, I just sort of realized we didn't do the test on the first flow, right? We actually suspended a user, right? But you can click this test button to actually run the flow. And if I go to my folder, we can see that this file right here, flow backup, was created. Okay. And again, you can see how the data, again, this schedule didn't play a role really here because we clicked test, but we exported the flow, then we created the file name, and then we uploaded the file to Google Drive. Now, right here in 1 minute and 20 seconds, it's going to run again. Okay. So we're going to wait another minute here. But this is another example I wanted to show you. And again, this one is runs on schedule, and we're using functions again, which kind of work with data, strings, files, lists, and so on. And then there's the example of uploading, using with actions, uploading to a service. Okay. But those are the two flows that I wanted to show you. Let me see if there are any questions. I don't see. Let me open this here. Well, let me know if there are any questions, either in chat or in the Q&A. So I see there's one question from Tamir. Let me see if I can move this to questions. Post comment as a question. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to move the comment to a question, but it's not working. But it's okay. So the question is, what does send as a bot mean? So let me go back. Oh, actually, it's finished. Let's look at this here, and I'm going to go back and do the bot thing. So right here, we can see that this was run just now, 3 minutes later. All right, so it runs on schedule, and then we can see it's going to run again in about 4 minutes. Okay, but let me go back, and let's go user suspended, and a bot. So I think the difference is the bot part is you can send a message as a user, as sort of yourself, or as a bot, which is being an app. So I think that's the difference. You can see it says app here. Okay. Now, if I'm going to do this quickly, but let's say I want to change this to oops, sorry, not to. Well, sorry, it's in options. Here we go. If we go to options, and if I say no, then you see some of the options disappeared. But if I now suspend the user, let's activate. It's a live test here, and then suspend. So now, you see, it came from me, right? So that's the difference. Now, I like this question. Like sometimes I'm using a card and I don't know what some particular field does. What's also very nice is that every card has a little question mark, and then if you open it, it actually opens a help window where you can kind of learn and understand how this particular card works. So again, I use this all the time. All right. All right. I think. Oh, here we go. I think move to the Q&A. Let's see here. So what if I wanted to back up all flows? All flows. You should be able to do that. I mean, you could just specify. You can specify a folder. So one option. It's probably not the best sort of design, but you can put all the flows in one folder. But you can have multiple backup flows pointing to different folders, for example, and then you would back up that folder, and the next flow would back up another folder. So that's perhaps one way to do that. And then another question is, can you back up tables as well as the flows? I don't remember. I don't remember. I would need to check. I don't remember if the table is being backed up as well. But when I send a follow-up message, I'll check that, and I'll include this question and answer in the message. All right, there's another one. Do you have any air handling options? So yes, the air handling options. There's no time really to show this now, but I have a blog post just about air handling. So in the follow-up message, I'm going to include the question as well, and then I'll include a link to the blog post that talks about air handling. Well, very cool. I like the question. So let me know if you have any additional questions. But if you have questions, later today or tomorrow, or let me share. Okay. So my email is there, and then the first link is all the resources that you will sort of need for workflows, from documentation to tutorials to the blog, to office hours, to a Slack channel, really everything you would need. But again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Let's see here. There's another question. Let me see if I can again. All right, I moved the question to the Q&A section, and so the question is, how do you connect to all those apps with your own company identity or some other admin identity, so when you leave the company, the policies are still valid? So yes, it's recommended is to have a sort of a separate account that you can connect with, right? So it's not your identity, because you said if you leave the company, then yeah, it's not going to be easy to figure this out. So you want to create another identity with which you would connect to all these services. Well, very cool. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm also always open, or actually would love to hear your, what other sessions we should run. I try to keep them under 30 minutes. I know it's easy to put it on the calendar versus a whole hour or even longer. So any topics, please let me know via email if you would like. And again, I'll send a message later today with some of the resources and answers to your questions. And I will see you next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.